Hello everyone and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show, in fact the first extra show of the new season. So thank you for once again starting another season with us, and this is the pod's 13th season. Hopefully it'll be lucky rather than unlucky. My name's Colin McMillan and I couldn't have a better guest with me to discuss pre-season, the transfer window and preview our trip to Livingston. It's Martyn Ramsay. Martyn, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, Colin. Good to be back. I think I'm just about ready now. Just kind of limbering up for the new season. Enjoyed. I'll try to just take June completely off from talking about football. Last season was exhausting emotionally. So yeah, I think I've timed my run perfectly.
Yeah, you've actually answered my first question for you already. I was going to ask you, did you enjoy taking a bit of a breath after the almost relentless and constant feeling of last season? Because I think by the time we left Hampden in May, we'd just everything had been in such a roller coaster. We were ready for a bit of a break from Rangers and from football, weren't we?
Yeah, I needed it. I know we use the roller coaster metaphor often. I don't think it's been more apt than last season. I mean, it really, really was, and it especially when I was lucky enough to pretty much be going every week, going away in Europe and whatever, and it was all you were thinking about. I know we think about Rangers probably more than is healthy anyway, but yeah, last season just took up to new levels from Dortmund, Belgrade onwards, really. So it was something else, but yeah, I needed that break, and unfortunately, WhatsApp groups don't quite allow it because people still froth and panic and talk for the whole summer endlessly. But yeah, we're there in the end, aren't we?
I can't think who you're referring to in that comment there, Martin. But we'll
few
move on from
candidates.
that. There is a few actually, yeah. So we did all enjoy that break. I think after a month or so, I think we all started to be ready for something to happen. Obviously, there's a big World Cup sized gap in our summer that we've got to look forward to, I suppose, come winter time. And the transfer window opened, and it was a little bit of a slow start for Rangers in the transfer market. Twitter and the aforementioned WhatsApp groups would make you believe it was even slower and longer than it really was to get going. But once it did start, Martin, it did really get going and kept going, didn't it? And I think going into the first game of the domestic campaign this weekend, we're in a pretty good place, I think.
Well, we're in a fresher place, which is what I certainly wanted. I'm sure I'm not the only one that we got on a bit of a journey. 55 European final with more or less the same group of players. It needed freshening up a lot. So I think that's what a lot of us wanted to see. Just a big influx of new faces. Now, this is not easy to do. High turnover summers are not easy to manage. Recruitment is a minefield at the best of times. So we'll see. We'll see where we are pretty quickly. But I think everyone is happy that there's at least a freshness to the squad. It did take a while to get going. I honestly don't know what the problem was. I don't know why people were surprised at this. I think it was very clear that for the first time in a long time, we were going to have a summer where we were going to make sales and big sales, likely make sales, big sales, which changes the whole ball game. If you have targets and there are different levels of targets, do you rush out and buy the targets you know you can afford that aren't as good as maybe some of the targets you're looking at? Do you go and rush out and get the prime targets and say, oh, I'm sure it'll be fine, I'm sure we will sell Joe, I'm sure we will sell Bassey, and then things kind of collapse, or you don't know what those deals look like? Then we're in the same kind of mismanagement that have led us to some pretty dark places recently. So I think it was always going to be a case of just knowing what we have to work with and then deliver. Now, there have been various phases to this window. I don't think we're in the last. The manager told us in the friendly on Saturday that after Yilmaz there wouldn't be any further signings unless players went out. Now, we have a pretty fat squad now. Players will go out, but they're the kind of players that will probably go out later on because they're going to need clubs to go, oh shit, we haven't done the business we wanted to. Right, yeah, we'll take a gamble on him. That's the kind of situation we are with some of those players. So I would expect there still to be more business, but later in the window, and also when we know exactly what we're dealing with in terms of Europe, in terms of what kind of prize money we're kind of left with. So I think it's been staged. I think it's been phased and paced rather well. But I don't know if I was in the minority. I thought that was pretty obviously always going to be the case. We couldn't go out and buy all the players that we've bought, Colin, without knowing what we've got to play with.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think you're right. That was the sensible thing to do, and it was what most would have or should have expected. I think the problem is the two other kind of doomsday scenarios that you gave as well as ones that we've seen the club do many times before, Martin. So some people are maybe just set up and ready for them, aren't they? But it did begin. We did see players leave. I want to have a look at some of the outs first before we look at the ins. 4 players that left that I'll talk about quickly. Cedric Itten, Firth, Balogun, and Jake Hasty. 4 players. I imagine you'll agree with me here. It was time for all 4 to go. Jake Hasty really quickly was a good signing at the right time. He was signed for the right reasons, but just didn't work out, and that's what's going to happen at that level. Balogun did a good turn for us on many occasions, but I think we want to look a little bit better than that going forward. Firth was great at putting the cones out, and Cedric Itten just never really fitted into our gameplay. Would you agree with those?
Well, Andy Firth for sure. I tell you, the best job in the world for a few years. Never missed an away, that boy. Hasty didn't make sense. I was never particularly convinced. He was in that category of player who looks good against us with an opposition Scottish team, because the opposition Scottish team are set up in a way that we would never set up at home and for the majority of our games. So I was never really convinced with that, and it didn't work out in the end. Balogun's an interesting one. Very popular with the support, very popular within the club. Noises, he was always quite keen to go back to Germany, but possibly the right time. I'm not sure he recovered from Hampden, the Hibs semi-final, where it was an appalling performance. No, it was an appalling team performance, but he was not good that day, and I'm not entirely sure he recovered particularly well from that. Itten, it didn't work. There's a couple of things here that we've got to bear in mind going forward. That kind of player, I'm not sure works with the way that we play. So why was he here? Did it give us another option? Okay, I understand that in theory. We're going to speak about another one of our signings. Could that be in the same boat? Don't know. But when Morelos, when fit, when available, plays every minute, how do you back that up? With players, I mean, Eden looks like the kind of boy who needs a run, you know? Can't just keep coming off the bench every now and again. I just don't think it's good for most players. So it's kind of Rangers are not the only club. You know, we played Spurs on Saturday. Obviously, they've struggled because Kane plays if Kane's fit. So if you've got another striker, there only is one number 9 now. Kane's changed his game a wee bit and Spurs have adapted, but it's maybe more an issue for them a few years ago. That, well, who do you bring in that's good enough and get the right mentality that's happy to sit on the bench and wait? So no, it just didn't happen for it in terms of the style, but just in terms of the fact that when was he going to get that run? When was he going to get the time to feel his way into the team? He certainly can't play with Alfie. I think we know that.
Not many can. Sadly, not many can. In terms of other outs, there was 2 major ones, Martin, and the club's been working to a model the last number of years, which is buy young, promising players, develop them, get a good turnout of them, be successful with them, and then move them on for a decent bit of money, make a profit on them. That's been the bit that's been sticking, really. That's the bit that we've not quite achieved yet up until this window, was to move them on and make money on them section for it. That changed with the sales of Aribo to Southampton and Calvin Bassey to Ajax. Aribo, quite early on in the window, there was some talk about this exit minimum release clause that he had, and he seemed quite keen to move down south. A couple of clubs interested, and in the end, he ended up at Southampton. I think on paper, when you look back at his time at Rangers, Martyn, he's been a really good signing. He came in, obviously, on that cross-border deal. We paid very little for him. We've got the best parts of £6 million or so, plus a bunch of add-ons and other things, hopefully a sell-on fee as well when he moves on from Southampton. He did well at Rangers. He got his success in a good part of 55. Do you think he's going to be missed?
Well, it depends on who we're going to talk about in the next kind of section in terms of who comes in, because life goes on in football and players are replaced, literally. That's the whole purpose of the market. Look, he, in terms of the model, you're absolutely right. He fits the bill. We paid buttons and we've churned out a big profit. I think the club are satisfied that the add-on targets are all manageable. So we would expect the best part of 10 million quid, I think, through the door. Joe was always going this summer. That was good season, bad season, last season. I don't think that mattered. He was going. So I think everyone is pretty okay with that now. There was a lot of talk at the time about selling so low, or this release clause being so low. He wouldn't have signed for us if it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't have signed for us if it wasn't what it was. So that's the reality of that situation. And in terms of this model, no, we haven't made it happen before, mainly because the previous manager would not allow it. And now we're starting to do that. So all the best to him. We miss him. I was going to say he's not a big game player. Literally scored in the biggest game Rangers playing, and I thought showed a lot of maturity and a lot of different strengths, and he's playing his character in that part of the season where we didn't have a striker and he was asked to play a slightly different role. But he could be a bit of a can opener at times when we were playing against a deep line team at the lower reaches of the league. He would be just what we needed. And you need that. If you're going to win a title, you need to amass points, obviously. And he did that, and he did that in abundance. So, he was. Yeah, I quite enjoyed Aribo, to be honest. But this is the right deal and the right time to go.
Yeah, he's probably, between him, the two players that left, he's the one we're going to see the most of, because he's down south. We're going to see him every Saturday on Match of the Day. We're going to get to see his hopeful improvement and stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how he does down there. The one we might not see as much of that the league he's gone to is Colin Bassey. Martyn has went to Ajax. I don't think I've seen a player make the improvements in 12 calendar months that he did in the last year or so at the club. The player that came in compared to the player that left us is like a completely different guy. He's worked on every single aspect of his game. He's improved every single aspect, and he became a first choice, one of the first names on the team sheet last season at left back or centre back, equally good, equally effective in both positions. And it was his performances in Europe, Martyn, that I think got most people's attention and got the clubs interested in him. And he's got himself that big move for big money to Ajax, and he is one I think we definitely will miss because of his ability to be so good in both those positions, isn't he?
I mean, 12 months has been kind. I mean, the improvement over 6 was probably more, or 6 or 7 is probably more like it, Colin. We've said this before, that performance in Prague was the worst individual performance I've seen from a Rangers defender in Europe. And it just looked like this boy just doesn't know where to be. He can't header a ball. And I've seen nothing like it. I've seen nothing like it in terms of improvement. His attitude. He's a lovely boy. And he does try and absorb everything, so I believe. And yeah, he was an absolute standout. It was remarkable, and I think that there has to be a train of thought that, well, that's very remarkable. How feasible is it that continues? Could this be a kind of one-off period, and therefore Rangers, for the first time since Alan Hutton, cashing in when there's a hot streak, absolutely the right deal to make. His reliability by the end of the season in two different positions is something we'll miss. I can't believe the boy looked as good as he did at centre half. He still made mistakes, but Adam's made this point a few times. He could still be careless, but his recovery pace, his recovery awareness was so good that he negated them. He negated them very quickly, and that's huge in the modern game to have defenders that quick. So it'll be very interesting to see how he does. We won't be watching. Well, I won't be watching a lot of Eredivisie, I don't think, but he'll be in the Champions League, you would imagine. And so, yeah, just a remarkable story. One thing that shouldn't be forgotten about that story is the Rangers manager or the management team and their role in that turnaround. Because on that disastrous day at Hampden, Gio's been pretty open about this, that he saw something in Bassey that he could work with in terms of how he was coming out to the ball, his positivity, his aggression. He just needed to shape and mould and work with. Now, of course, you need someone like Bassey who is absolutely willing to learn and to respond. But I think there's been some coaching there. Now, if they can do it with Bassey, you would like to hope that they could do it with some of the talent we already had and some of the new talents come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Two players that have went on, Martyn. We've made a lot of money out of them, and I think they go with most of our best wishes, and we hope to see them develop, none more so because of the sell-on fees and stuff that we've got in those deals as well. So fair play to both of them. I hope they do well. In terms of players coming in, this is a bit other side of the city to refer to this as a new signing, Martyn, but I think on this one occasion, it's worth mentioning, especially with Bassey leaving, that Connor Goldson was so far out the door that him signing a new deal is almost like a new signing, Martyn, because I think losing Bassey and him in the one summer would have been a big ask to get a defence ready for qualifiers and be confident with them, isn't it?
Huge. And you're right. I think we all assumed he was going, and to find out that, all right, I think Golson's going to sign a new deal today. So where you go, and lo and behold, he did. Was remarkable. And again, Rangers held firm on this. If you think of last summer, Goldson thought he could get a better deal. The kind of combination of money plus, how to put it, games that were relevant, games that had the big lights and the big nights, and really fighting for something. And Rangers were confident he couldn't get that package. You get more money elsewhere, but the combination of decent money and what some of the nights that he has experienced last season and the season before, but especially last season, Rangers were confident he wouldn't get anywhere else, and they were prepared to hold tight on that. And well done, because it was a bit of a coup. He's so reliable, isn't he? I mean, he's been the absolute foundation of what's happened, especially over the last couple of years. And if that continues, then it's going to be important, because we could have, or we certainly have in recent years, a bit of a revolving door of centre halves in the other position because of injuries. Ben Davies doesn't. We'll touch on him in a minute, but he doesn't have a history of injury concerns. So hopefully there's a partnership that can find its feet pretty quickly, and both very reliable players. But you're absolutely right. Losing both of those, with the potential losing Barisic as well. People wanted him hunted. That's three big parts of a defence that we're very used to, and Balogun. So yeah, it's a huge thing that he's still in the picture.
A player that's come in on a pre-contract who probably signed that pre-contract, Martyn, expecting to play more games than he might find himself playing, is John Souttar. What was your thoughts on that signing?
Well, the Souttar discussion is maybe been a wee bit unfair. He, as we speak now, he probably isn't going to be first choice centre half. He's an option. He's an option for certainly certain kind of games that maybe require us to go to a 3, and we don't lose Lundstrom in midfield by putting him in the 3. So there's an option there. So that's fine. When he was signed back in the winter, there was the narrative, and this wasn't by Rangers, it wasn't by John Souttar or Conor Goldson, it was, the fans, putting two together and coming up with something other than four. But it was, is that the replacement for Goldson? Because we presumed he was tatty bye. And that would have been a problem, personally, I think. He has attributes, of course. I take the cup final, for example, where people were talking quite highly of him. At least Souttar played very well today. He'll be good for us. I said, well, if we play with a 5 every week and play like Hearts did in that cup final, yeah, he will. But we don't. And I said earlier, there's this weakness with how we look at players in Scotland playing well against us and thinking that will be the same as playing for Rangers, and it's not the same thing. Added to the injury thing, which is my big concern. Just in general, Colin, I've had enough of hearing people talk about prospective players with the caveat, if he stays fit. I'm done with it. Anything can happen, of course, but when you know a player has a less than stellar record of reliability, then I'm not a huge fan of that. Before we even get into where does he fit and how reliable is he on the pitch, I'm just kind of done with that. So that would be the biggest issue with Souttar. But in terms of our options, we're looking all right now, and he certainly plays a part in that conversation. That's a different conversation that took place in the winter.
Absolutely, yeah. The injury things is a concern when you come to a club like ours as well, where not only have you got to step up in class and expectation, not many clubs play as many games as we do. It's relentless, midweek, weekend, every game, every week of the season, pretty much. So yeah, there's definitely that one to kind of contend with as well when it comes to John Souttar. We needed a striker, Martyn, and we went out and we got the guy that kicked off the road to Seville for us, Antonio Cholak, who we'll all remember for those 2 goals for Malmo around about this time last season. He's pretty much played all of pre-season, probably because of everyone else isn't fit. It isn't going to be for a while. So it looks like he is the man that's going to lead the line for us starting on Sunday, and especially for the start of the season. He got his goal against Tottenham, and he certainly looks like he's got something about him. Like we said, we saw it for Malmo, and he's looking like a different option. He's looking like a guy that can come in and do something a little bit different and offer us something when Morelos isn't there.
Yes, but that's the Eton conversation. He offers us something different when Morelos isn't there. Well, I mean, Morelos being injured is rare. He's tough as teak. This is a new thing now. Who knows? Maybe this precipitates a kind of recurring issue with him. I don't know.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Yeah, if I say it or not, it makes no difference. But I wonder about that. It's the issue with having such a talisman, and there's the issue with Roof having them on the part. Of course, you will get some benefit of it from it, but does it work as well as just having either of them in that kind of central position? I don't know about that type of forward. He's not been short of endeavour in pre-season, I don't think. And he was about and kept his composure when that chance reared its head. I just don't want us to be, because we have someone with that kind of physique, turn in naturally, subconsciously, turn into some kind of direct side. And it's going to be interesting. He's a big job to do in these first few weeks of the season. But if he can do it, then it absolutely starts a conversation about does Morelos grab that shot when he comes back? So an interesting one. My only worry is that it's the same kind of conversation we're having about it. He is a better player. Can I make that clear? He certainly looks a better player than Cedric Itten. But it's just when we use him and how ready he is to do that job for us when we are looking for, as you say, something different. It's not as easy as that. It's not as simple as that.
We have improved a fair bit in midfield with some attacking players coming in. First of all, Tom Lawrence on a free transfer, previously of Derby County. A guy we saw a couple of seasons ago in a pre-season friendly against Derby at Ibrox, where him and Tav had a bit of a spat during the game, which I'm sure folk will remember. He's come in and he's looked quite impressive in his pre-season performances so far. A couple of assists, Martyn, and he looks like he's going to offer something a little bit different. He's not scared of taking a shot. He's able to take a shot from outside the box as well, and he seems to have a really good, quick first touch, which is kind of what you want from a player in those sort of areas. So he's going to offer us something we've potentially not had for a while in that sort of role, isn't he?
Yeah, a bit more dynamic than if he plays 10, for example, or he plays the Aribo role. It's certainly more dynamic than Joe. And yeah, he loves a shot, and we've probably been a bit shot shy from range. I think that's fair to say.
Sure.
His movement is good. Again, this is on a very small sample size in a Rangers shirt, but he is one of the ones that you're very keen to see and quite excited about, because he clearly has a good football brain. He just looks good on the ball and just great awareness and is happy to have a dig. Already a few signs against Spurs that he might not go through the season unscathed in terms of red cards. I think we knew that in advance. And yeah, he's maybe the ace that we've brought in. I don't know, but he certainly looked what an impact against West Ham, for example. Did he score with his first touch, or was he maybe involved in the move earlier? I can't remember, but he's going to be good, hopefully.
Another one that I think's got people excited is Rabbi Matondo. Came in from Schalke. We spent some money on him, Martyn. He's come in and he's looking like the basically the alternative to Kent on the other side. Fast pace, able to beat a man. His pace has been quite frightening so far in pre-season, how quick he is on the ball. But he doesn't seem to be just a speed merchant. He does seem to have more about him than that, Martyn. What I've been impressed with him is his ability that when he beats the man, he actually stops and he looks up and he makes a decision rather than just blasting crosses into the box. I've seen him crossing, I've seen him cutting back, I've seen him doing passing, and I've seen him actually just run into the box himself as well. Regardless of what he does or how many goals he sets up or how many goals he scores, I think he's a guy that's going to get us up on our feet a fair few times this season.
Yep, as all those attributes, Colin, and I completely agree with you about decision making, and that's a key for us. I think the Spurs' first goal on Saturday came from our counter-attack, a failed counter-attack, a clumsy, indecisive, dithering counter-attack that I've seen far too often. Decision making is important. Yes, taking a moment to see the pitch, but then committing to that. And from the, again, very small sample size, he looks like he has all of that. Awareness to make that right call. And we've asked too much of Kent. Kent has been too willing to try and do everything, and I think it's been counterproductive, actually, and he's going to suffer from that. Having someone else on that side with the same, basically putting the same worry into defenders, I think gives far more, by definition, far more balance to the Rangers team, because the opposition are not as happy for the ball just to be funneled out to the right and keep it away from the left hand side. So yeah, that would be great if we take that weight of creative responsibility off of Kent's shoulders and maybe free him up a wee bit. Because I don't think last season's numbers were all round were good enough, certainly in terms of finishing. But I think he's such a good player when he's free and just feeling far more relaxed about doing his job. And yeah, having someone else take that load would be ideal.
Yeah, Ryan Kent's a player that, you're right, he does take on that responsibility, and you can actually see it getting to him when it doesn't work out, and he keeps trying, and sometimes to his detriment, Martyn, he keeps trying and keeps trying and keeps trying because he maybe feels like he's the only one that can make that difference and be the guy that finds a pass and suddenly makes the chance. So yeah, having someone else for the domestic defence to put 3 or 4 men on every time they get the ball can only be advantageous to us. So yeah, I think that'll be a good duo to watch, how they link up and how they combine and how they hopefully hurt teams on either side. the other player to come in midfield or potentially further forward, we're not quite sure exactly what role he's going to play yet, is Malik Tillman on loan from Bayern Munich with a fee agreed for a future purchase should we wish to do so. He's only played limited minutes so far, Martyn, but he certainly seems by all accounts to have something about him, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it immediately looked very comfortable on Saturday against those opponents. One thing that was noticeable, anyone who was at either of the two Ibrox friendlies, with these elite Premier League teams, they are huge. They're just huge and physical and quick and skillful. I mean, it's a complete package these days. And Tillman he has some physical presence about him as well as being, again, very comfortable in the ball, quick decision making. But you need that. You need to dominate, especially up here. You need to dominate. You can't be a big lump, nothing about you in terms of brain or technique. He seems to have all of that. So that's another one that's exciting and a loan that makes sense. We're not developing someone else's player. We have the option should he have a great season. And yeah, let's hope he does.
With Colin McMillan leaving, Martyn, you don't just have to replace one player, you actually have to replace two because of the basically the ability he had to play two different positions for us. And we've spent a bit of the Colin McMillan money already in doing just that in defence. First off, with Ben Davies coming in from Liverpool, he is probably going to play alongside Connor Goldson, you would imagine, for the majority of matches, especially when we're just playing the standard four at the back. And we signed the left back from Turkey and Ridvan Yilmaz for the money spent and for the potential this guy has. You've got to imagine to come straight in at left back as well. How do you see these two doing from a defensive point of view?
Two interesting ones. I mean, Yilmaz is I think one we're all quite excited about, and it does give us genuine options at fullback, left back, sorry. And I'd be interested to see how Borna responds to that. But that looks great, and that could be another one that in 3-4 years we are, or our successors on this show are sitting around a microphone talking about the money that we've got for Yilmaz. So excited about that. Davies is an interesting one. The numbers make all the sense in the world. Well, you don't sign for Liverpool unless they do. It'll be interesting to see how he is, just as a human, because he obviously didn't kick a ball for Liverpool. Not well received at United. Sheffield United, of course, is where he went, and I think he gets sent off pretty early, and I don't know if that just his head went down, never really recovered. He also maybe playing in a setup that maybe didn't suit them, but maybe suits us. So yeah, can play in a 3, can play in a 4, flexibility, but I think it's pretty clear him and Goldson are on paper going to look like the key men, and we had to make those kind of moves, and I think we're all content, Colin. I think we're not going into this concord. We've not really, because last summer I think we all understood we've not done enough here. We have not done enough, and it's just the same lads. No freshness, apart from Lundstrom, who obviously turned out well. So I think we're all content that we have freshened up. Let's just give it a while. There could be some slow burners. They're up there, usually are, and there could be people that go for a firework, and then they've had that hot streak by October. So we'll wait, but at least we have something to be excited about. Again, just come back to that freshness thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on Davies and Yilmaz, just for a second, I think the idea or the hope is that what they two could give us is kind of similar to what you get on the other side of the defence from Goldson and Tav, isn't it? That ability to kind of link up together, Goldson play forward balls onto Tav, hopefully see the same sort of thing on the left-hand side, which if we're able to do that, both on the left and the right, it just does opens up a whole new kind of attacking start for us, which we've not really had. So I think that's the idea behind the link up of those two and what they hope to see. So you're right. There's a lot of good stuff here, I think, on paper. the people that have come in look pretty good. But as I've said a few times on the Patreon site now, Martyn, you don't judge a transfer window before the season starts. It can look fantastic on paper, but we won't really know how good it is or not until the end of the season. But I think in terms of the players that have left have been replaced by better players. And I think we've brought in some more creative players and some players that offer things that we didn't have last season. And as a starting point for where we are just now, going into the new season, I think content and, dare I say, excited is maybe the right words to use.
Yeah, there's an excitement. Well, let's be honest, we don't know. We haven't seen enough of the players we've got in. That's kind of normal now. We kind of should be used to this. Long are the days where Rangers were signing players that you had seen and you'd seen a lot of. So, and that brings with it another kind of excitement because it's new. But again, on paper, everything not done yet, I don't think. But where we are at the moment is where I hoped we would be. Certainly a very different place from where we were at the start of the window. And I think just a general feel, Colin, the general mood is different from the sleepwalking complacency that defined last July.
Absolutely, yeah. And also just to mention as well, we're quite far along by all accounts on 2 new contracts for both Tav and Alfredo Morelos. Tav himself at the open training day spoke about his was in discussions, and the manager spoke to Sky Sports earlier this week and confirmed they were quite well along with Alfredo as well. You've heard it directly from the captain, so I think you can bank on that one being true. And I don't think the manager puts himself in that position to talk about Morelos and his contract, Martyn, unless that one's quite far along either. And really that's 2 important players to tie down.
Again, when you've got so much turnover and there will be faces going out, there has to be. They're still depending on a willing buyer. Fans almost quite often forget that. But with so much turnover, you're securing some key performers now. Given the business we've done in terms of numbers, does both Davies and Arfield's extension make a lot of sense? They certainly did at the time to many. Whether they do now is another thing. But Goldson, Tav, Morelos, there have not been many, if any, more consistent performers in a Rangers shirt over the last few years. So amidst change, a manager with his first pre-season as well, by the way, to underline a lot of some stability would be of great help.
So looking ahead to this weekend then, Martyn, we have a trip to Livingston at lunchtime on Saturday to kick off the season, live on Sky Sports. Interestingly, Sky Sports coverage this season, Martyn, is going to be in 4K or Ultra HD in Scotland for the first time, so we'll get to see every speckle of that pitch at Livingston, which will be lovely to see. You kind of know what you're getting at Livingston. They've had their usual sort of summer. They've lost 11 players. They didn't get money for any of them. And they've brought in 6 players and not paid any money for any of them either. I'm assured that the main one they've brought in is a goalkeeper, Shamal George from Colchester, who has impressed in pre-season and seems to have something about him. But Livi finished last season in 7th place, Martyn, 49 points. 1 point more than 4th place Dundee United finished on, thanks to Scottish football and the split. We played them on the opening day last season. We won 3-0, goals from Hadji, Wright and Roof in front of a half-capacity Ibrox, and we beat them in all 3 league matches that season and put them out the Scottish Cup. This should be a relatively straightforward start to the league campaign. 3 points in the bag straight away, shouldn't it?
I'm so bold of going to Livingston, but that's just Scottish football.
But you'll still go, so...
Oh, well, of course, Rangers are playing, you'll be there. Yeah, he works well with what he has. He is quite happy to manage that kind of turnover that we spoke about. It's not an easy place to go, even though we're normally okay. A few draws there, obviously, over the years, and draws in this league can be very costly, as we found out last season. I don't think it's going to be a stroll in the sunshine. It kind of really is, but You're right. So you know what you're going to get. There's not going to be much in the way of surprise, tactically or otherwise, and we just have to match that intensity, that effort, deal with the environment, and go about our business. Because I think in the past, when we have suffered there, we've gone and we've regressed to the opposition's level. And I think that's where we get into problems instead of just trusting our game, trusting the people around, the players around, and imposing ourselves, because we shouldn't be worried about going to Livingston. But I think we'll win. I think it'll be 2-1.
So, okay. I was going to ask you for prediction later on, but you've done it already, so thank you. I think given the players that have played pre-season, we've got a good idea of how the team's going to line up at the weekend. There's potentially a couple of injury issues and players that have been brought in that aren't quite up to speed yet, that kind of rules them out. Probably the big question, Martyn, is the goalkeeper and how we're going to start the season. I think how we start the season on Saturday gives us an idea of who actually is the number one. I think John McLaughlin's probably seen more action in pre-season than Alan McGregor has, but Alan McGregor did get that new contract, and I would imagine there was some assurances that he was at least told that he'll be in contention to play. I think, I know personally, and I've heard quite a few of the guys on other pods in pre-season, that I think we're all quite keen to see John McLaughlin step up and be the number one. Are you got that sort of frame of thought as well? And more importantly, do you think that's what's going to happen?
I think it will be McLaughlin. I don't know why that contract was given. I mean, I know McGregor does what McGregor does on Saturday against Spurs. He makes some great saves. No one, I think anyone, even in last season, had criticised shot stopping. Apart from the cup semi-final, the League Cup semi-final against Hibs. McGregor can do that. He can do it spectacularly well. It was other things that cost. And I personally thought it was the time to, and the way that the cup final panned out and everything, to say goodbye to a Rangers legend, possibly the greatest ever, in that position that we've had. So a strange dynamic. If it's to keep the Scottish contingent there, great. If it's a cup goalkeeper, I mean, is that not really what you use in blood younger goalkeepers? I don't know. I think this is the one that really, really didn't make much sense to me. No issue with McLaughlin being the number one at the moment, but perhaps we could have gone and found an understudy that we trust, because I'm not entirely sure McCrory is trusted or thought of as kind of the heir apparent eventually. So that's, I just can't be asked with this conversation, to be honest. Who's going to be the number one? Who's, some kind of weekly dialogue on it? I would have preferred that to have had a line under it in the summer, and it's not.
Yeah, I think what we don't want as well is John McLaughlin in a position where he starts as number one, he maybe makes one mistake, you've got Alan McGregor, and suddenly the full Rangers support become the biggest Alan McGregor fans in the world, and they demand him to come back in, sort of thing. I think that's a pressure and a headache that John McLaughlin, trying to establish himself as the number one, probably doesn't need. And I certainly don't want us in a position where we're maybe playing one for 2 or 3 games and changing it. There's always the chance that McGregor plays European games because he's got the homegrown status that McLaughlin doesn't. And maybe they think a shot stopper is more important in Europe because they're going to be under more pressure. I don't know. There must be some thinking behind that new contract, but you're right. The constant sort of guessing about who's going to be the goalkeeper, it's a distraction that the goalkeeper and the defence themselves probably don't need. So hopefully, whoever it may be between the two of them starts the season, and there's no reason for this conversation to keep going because they play well. And hopefully it's John McLaughlin.
Yeah, well, I think he will be.
Yeah, I think you'll be right. We will find out that amongst many other things come Saturday lunchtime, and we're very much looking forward to it. You've given your prediction. You think 2-1. I'm going to go a little bit bolder. I think we'll match last season's opening game, and we'll do the 3-0 with the victory on Saturday. That's my prediction. I think that'll do us for extra for today, Martyn. Thank you very much for coming on. It's much appreciated.
Oh, it was a pleasure, Colin. Let's start again.
Absolutely, yeah. And everyone, thank you for listening. David will be back with you with the flagship this Monday, and Extra will continue on Fridays throughout the season as well. All that's left for me to do is thank our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Myers. And if you'd like to hear more from me and all the other podders, then please check out our Patreon site at patreon.com/heart and hand, where you'll get up to 5 shows every single day, including Martyn's Dominant series, which has been getting rave reviews over there and is well worth a listen. So please do check it out. Until then, thanks for tuning in and enjoy having the football back. Speak to you soon.